Hello, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Members of the League of Women Voters from all over Maryland visited Annapolis this week to speak with their representatives and state senators, observe the General Assembly in action. Elaine Apter, co-president of the Maryland League, is here to report. Montgomery County officials, aware of the increasing number of Alzheimer's patients throughout the county, are engaging in a nationwide dementia-friendly initiative to assist patients and their families. Stuart Rosenthal, the editor and publisher of the Beacon newspaper, is here to explain. The upcoming Democratic primary in June will have more candidates than can actually be counted, maybe more than the stars in the sky. Questions abound on how voters will determine who to vote for. Linna Barnes, associate producer of this very show, Montgomery Week in Review, has this story and so much more. Moving from constituent services on Capitol Hill for a U.S. Senator to working as Director of Development for Interfaith Works highlights how these jobs are similar. Suzanne Lofhjelm has made the move, and she's here to tell us why they are so similar. Elaine Apter, welcome.
Hi, great to be here again.
Well, it's always a pleasure when you're here. And for the League of Women Voters, there you are. You've developed your issues, you've thought about them, you've considered them, you've let the legislators in Annapolis know what's important, and then you all went down to Annapolis and let them know face to face what you wanted to do.
We do this annually. Montgomery County had a great group of women and men there, and we visited all the legislators from Montgomery County. 32, I believe. Yes, but it was worth it. It really was. And interestingly enough, we talk a lot about, of course, what's going on in the voter registration and those bills. Right. But we also kind of look at what we oppose, because sometimes things go through and you really don't realize it. Well, let's wait right there. Before going to oppose, what are some of the issues, real quick, because I know everybody's got questions, that you're really pushing for? Okay, there are three basically main ones. One is we would love to see voter registration and being able to vote the day of same-day registration. Same-day registration. The other one is to have unaffiliated voters be able to register with a party on that day so they could vote in the primary. So what we call independent voters would be able to register temporarily and be able to vote in the primary. In the primary, yes. And then the third one is the opt-out. And that is when you register, say, the motor vehicle, they will have a screen, and what they will say is you are now registered to vote. If you do not want to be registered, you check here. As opposed to opting in. Opting in, right. So what you're talking about is access. You want more people to be able to vote, to be able to exercise their right to vote. Right. That's what it's all about, right? That's the key.
Are there that many people who wait till the very last second to even think about voting and then come in and say, can I register now? Does it happen a lot?
It does. The main problem is the one with the unaffiliated voters. And they're the ones, if you go to the polls, there are more and more in Montgomery County that are registering unaffiliated, especially the younger voters. And when they go to the primary, they cannot vote for anything but the school board, basically.
And I've seen that when I've been in doing poll support work at the polls, and there are people that are incredibly upset. They come in and they really think they're going to be able to vote in a primary, whether it be at a presidential, where they're going to vote for, the Democrats or the Republicans, or other races, and then they find out it's really very limited what they can vote for. Not even judges. really just the school board in
Right.
that primary.
And even when you speak to them when they register to vote and you say we have a closed primary system, you won't be able to vote in the primary for most of the candidates, and they don't care. They don't want to
At
be
that-
associated
at that moment, right?
At that moment.
Right.
But then when they come in and they get their ballot and it says Board of Education and nothing else, they are very
That's when it
frustrated.
hits them. I'm wondering, has there been a real uptick in terms of young people that are registering, given everything that's going on in the country? Are you really seeing the numbers increase?
Yes, we are seeing increase in numbers. Now the key is for any new registered or any voter is to get them out and to get them voting. Registration is one thing, actually getting them to the polls, that's the most important thing.
We've got a short time left. Let's go to what you oppose. Now I understand there's something about the
Oh,
wind
yes,
generation.
the
that's-
Windshore. There is all of a sudden, and things were ready to go in Maryland. It means jobs, it means everything.
for wind power,
For wind power.
X number of miles. How
And
far
there
off
is
the
a
shore?
bill that came up that said that the windmills should be at least 60 miles offshore. That stops everything in Maryland, because then you have to go to get federal review of things. And for some reason, as we said, this was ready to go. The opponents say that the people in Ocean City don't want to see windmills. Well, they'll be so far out. And the other thing is, we found that the Ocean City residents have no problem with the windmills, and people think it could be an attraction for them to
So
come
some of it
see.
probably from the energy companies who are alternatives like
To
coal
alter-
or fracking
right,
or whatever,
could
different
be,
parts of the state.
yeah, we're not sure, but this is one that we really want to watch, and you don't hear much about it, and it just came up as a surprise to.
We got about 30 seconds left. Anything that you are, want to see happen or
Well, as I said, the bills that we discussed on the election are the prime ones. And what was interesting is when I was testifying is the League of Women Voters and Maybe Common Cause are about the only ones that testify on these bills. So that's why the League is so important to be there.
Well, thank
and
you
we
for being-
will be there.
Thank you for being there for all of us. Appreciate it. Stuart,
Don.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Our monthly discussion with you about all things Beacon.
Thank you.
So let's start. We're talking about dementia.
Our cover story is about awareness of dementia. There's a national program called the Dementia Friendly Initiative. I really hate the name,
Sure.
but the idea basically is saying that we need to be friendlier and more accustomed to seeing people who have early signs of dementia, because we have to interact with them differently than we would a normal person.
Because we're all everybody's getting older.
The Alzheimer's
life
Association says
expectancy.
10% of people over 65 are going to get Alzheimer's at some point,
Wow.
and even more at a later life. So it's very high percentages. It's lots of numbers of people. So the fact that's the case, they're going to be living in the community for many years. They don't go right into a nursing home the moment you are diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another dementia. You live with your family, or you live in the community. You're wandering around. You're going to a restaurant, or you're going to a bank, and people don't know how to treat you.
Stuart, I actually have a question. The difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, if you
good
could
question.
explain that.
Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. There are other types of dementia, Lewy body dementia. There are various different causes and names for what makes this a dementia, and it's just one of them. It's just the one that everybody knows because it's got the most publicity
But
and the largest numbers.
it's really interesting because in the 70s, my mother got Alzheimer's, early onset. And it was interesting that no one knew what it was.
No.
I used to watch television shows, and they would be putting a script together, and I'd go to my husband, this person has Alzheimer's. And they would come on, and this was in the early 70s, and they'd come on, and they'd talk about all the symptoms, and then somebody would say, it's this thing called Alzheimer's, and everybody would say, how do you spell that? So it's interesting, in that is what?
Awareness has grown
45
tremendously.
years, 40 years.
Right.
It is so different than what it was.
So the county is really in the forefront of educating the police and EMS people,
Right.
the banks and businesses of all kinds, schools, religious institutions. They have a speakers bureau going around talking about it and showing videos and explaining this is someone who's got this kind of a problem. This is how you interact with them. If they're starting to get aggressive, this is what you do. This is what might set them off. You're learning a lot of things that you need to know in order to deal with them in our coming social situation.
Yeah.
And for neighbors and everybody else. coming in.
Absolutely.
That's what I was going to say, neighbors too, if
Right.
you're in a senior community. And there are so many different ways that Alzheimer's or dementia expresses
Oh, yes.
themselves. I had a neighbor that called at 4 o'clock in the morning one time and said, "What time are we supposed to go somewhere?" You know, so and you get alert, but a lot of us that live in the community think, okay, we need to alert a family member, and that's some of the things that I'm sure you're discussing.
Yes, we all have a lot to learn, and this is what the initiative is
It's all
for.
in that article.
Right.
Can't look. Wait. What are some other issues?
Very interesting health stories, I think, this month. Saline solution. You go into a hospital as a guest, or you're somebody
Right.
in the hospital, you see this bag of liquid dripping into somebody's arm. That's either to give them medication or pain relief or just fluids and whatnot. They've determined, in fact, they've known for a number of years now that saline, which is just salt and water, causes serious kidney problems and even early death in some people who would not have that if you used balanced fluids, which in addition to saline, they have potassium and some other minerals that make it more like the blood, like the plasma in the blood.
It's like what you're supposed to give children to drink when they're dehydrated. It's not just the water,
Not just salt
but
water,
the,
yeah. The
But this has been
electrolytes
known
and whatnot.
for years?
Apparently, in Europe and in Australia, they use balanced fluids all the time. In America, we're still almost completely using saline. And they've determined that literally tens of thousands of people a year would be better off, not have kidney disease or death if they just switched to balanced fluids. So
Right.
I think you can ask your doctor, and if you're ever in the hospital or you're visiting somebody in the hospital, why don't you switch that to
Another
balanced
reason to read the Beacon.
Yes.
Next story.
Allergy season is coming up, and I didn't know this, but the body, once the body starts reacting to an allergy, it's really hard to stop it, and it tends to snowball. So they say, and it takes several weeks for the corticosteroid sprays that you're supposed to take in your nose to start working. The cells in the nose have to be sort of turned off by this. So you should start 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time, and which just means now, basically, to start taking this daily nasal spray or antihistamines in order to prepare your body for the upcoming
is that like
flu.
Flonase? Those
Yes,
sorts of-
exactly.
Okay.
So if you have a very strong allergy response, you have terrible allergies every spring, you should start acting on
So
it
do a
now.
prophylactic and then the
Exactly.
curative when, and that's going to be
It'll help you all the way through. Keep
It's
it
going to
all
be
the way
less severe.
Right.
Now, there's another story
Yes.
that I think, Stuart, you and I, it's very important for
Yes,
the two of us.
The men watching the show will be very interested in this, as will the women, I think. Actually.
Exactly.
We're not,
no.
it's not that we're whiners. I
Here
mean,
we
this is
go.
great. This
Well,
is
we're
empowerment.
whiners too, but let's be honest. But the question is, do men complain more than they need to when they get sick? Do they just fetchers? They just sort of feel like, oh, take care of me, I'm sick.
We have about a minute left.
Okay, so what they've determined, they did a study with the flu vaccine. It turns out men's response to the flu vaccine is much smaller than that of women. So women have better protection against the flu from the vaccine, and they get a less serious version of the disease. Also, women's immune response to getting the flu is less forceful, it's less strong. So they don't get as much of the congestion and whatnot that causes all the side effects of the flu. First, also men tend to be hospitalized more and tend to die more from the flu than do women. So there does seem to be a difference, and this shouldn't be surprising because the same is true of heart attacks. When men get a heart attack, their symptom is usually crushing chest pain. Women don't have that. They have, nausea or a little shortness of
So
breath.
this
It's
is
a whole different-
revenge for the fact that the women have go through all the pain of pregnancy
Something
and all
like
of that
that.
stuff,
Right.
and we're off easy,
Right.
but we
So-
feel it.
So treat your guy like he's
Lifetime.
pregnant if you want
So
to.
we should be more forgiving, is what I'm
Exactly.
hearing.
Oh.
You got it.
Well, it's interesting. Both my husband and I have bronchitis, and he is suffering much more than I am.
Well,
now
you
you know
know-
why.
Yes.
Well, you know who's not suffering? The viewers. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with this great crew. Those are really stretchy. We're back. Linna Barnes, associate producer of this show.
Hi.
Reluctant guest, but when you're a guest on this show, it brings such
Well,
joy to all of us.
It always means we've missed the opportunity to see somebody else other than myself, so that's why I'm reluctant.
Oh, former mayor of Chevy Chase, or
Yes.
and everything else. You're
Yes.
the star of Stage and Suite. Let's talk about your mayor days. Let's talk about
mayor
No.
days.
But looking through, you've been in public office,
Mm-hmm.
you've served, and it seems that this year, 2018, I've never seen so many individuals who have felt the calling to serve by coming in to run for office.
It is. The sign up, the registration deadline passed at the end of February, so now we have all the candidates who are out there have filed to run for office in Montgomery County.
So give us a rundown just by office, some of the big ones, just of the numbers. For
well,
instance, county council at large. How many?
County Council at large in Montgomery County, 38 Democratic candidates plus some Republicans and independents.
For four seats.
For 4 seats. We're focusing today really on the Democratic ballot because that is where most of the people have filed. I don't think there'll be that many actually contested races on the Republican ballots in the primary that comes up in June.
We'll be talking about the Republicans and the Democrats really going at the general election.
After the primary
But right
happens.
now the primary is primary. It's a lot of Democrats who
It's
want to be the
Democrats.
Democratic
so
nominees.
You've got, oh my goodness, I think there are 9 Democratic governor candidates.
Right.
Ben Cardin's seat. Ben Cardin is up for election, the senator from Maryland. Their
County executive.
county executive, Ben Cardin has 6. County executive has 6 Democrats.
Right.
Candidates because it's an open seat.
You had the first, I think, with the different, I think the first district, the county council has numerous folks
yes,
coming
not
in as
all.
well.
A couple of the county councils, Nancy Navarro and Tom Hucker, they're uncontested in the Democratic primaries.
So I'm wondering what the effect of term limits. Is that a big impact on the number?
You have hit on it, Suzanne. There are 4 county council seats, 1 in a district, and then 3 of the 4 at-large seats. Those people were termed out. So therefore, that's why you have those openings. Yeah. So you have 4 open seats in that, 3 open seats in the 4 for county council at large, and that's where there's that's where the 38 Democratic candidates running.
So let's talk about this a little bit. I mean, the folks are going to be able to go. We have the League of Women Voters president for Maryland here, and you have played a leadership role there as well. The guide, the League Women Voters Voters Guide, is going to be key.
Absolutely critical. Usually they're televised debates or they're forums you can go to, but this year in all the races, it's really difficult. I mean, if you have 38 candidates, how on earth do you do a debate?
Yes.
I mean,
I've moderated a lot of debates in the past. As you and I working those, and and it really
it's
is
hard with 10.
Yeah, well, it's hard with 5 at times because the tendency is, as you go around, the person's going to say, well, what do you feel about that issue? And by the time it gets to be the 5th or the 10th, like, oh my God, how many times do we have to hear that over and over again? And yet, if you try to have everybody have different questions, then you have the complaints, well, I wasn't asked the same question as this other person.
Exactly.
Right.
So debates are impossible. It's really going to come down to voter guides. The league sponsors Vote 411, which will be up and running in, I guess, another month, and that gives you on the internet responses to questions. But there'll also be the in-print guide.
And then organizations. I mean, there'll be certainly different candidates are going to be liked by different organizations.
Well, endorsements are happening. A few places have endorsed already, but most of them tried to wait until the end of the filing deadline because they didn't want to have any candidates come up that they hadn't known about.
And then the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun, those are going to be huge because, maybe more this time than ever.
I don't know. I mean, it's a compliment.
No.
Well, actually, there's a coalition of nonprofit senior groups, GROWS and a few others, who are doing a senior voters guide for the county council and county executive, just those candidates, and it's going to be in the Beacon. So,
that's good.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
It also seems like there are a lot of community gatherings where some of the candidates for particular seats are invited, and that's like an informal
And
opportunity.
I know someone was talking about a speed
About 30
dating,
seconds left.
essentially, forum where all the 38 candidates stood around, and you got to walk around and talk to them and find out what they had to say. And every 30 seconds the bell would ring, and that was your time, and you had to go to somebody else. So,
Promise you'll help us work our way through this between now and
I'll
the
try
primary.
to, but I'm not. It's great for democracy that so many people are running, but it makes it very difficult for people who want to vote to figure out who to vote for.
Democracy is great because anybody can run, and
That's right, and then
Anyone
the
is
voter
right.
has to figure it out. But with the help of the Beacon and the Voters Guide from the League, this will, hopefully people get the information they need.
thanks, Linna.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. So we go from this chaos here to what you had before. Suzanne, welcome to the show. It's your first time.
Thank you very much.
You were working for our junior senator from the state of Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, and you left that office to continue your service within the poverty, within the deserving community within Montgomery County.
I sure did.
Tell us a little bit about your life.
Well, actually, I think when I first tell people that I made the transition, there's some confusion around it because working for a U.S. senator, it's exciting and lots of opportunity, and how it's similar for the senator actually handled a lot of the local work around issues of poverty, homelessness, affordable housing, for example. And so, of course, with Interfaith Works, we have 14 integrated programs that help people lift themselves out of poverty.
Right.
And so there's a commonality there. And while being in the community for the senator, got to know a lot of the local officials and the nonprofits and the
Right.
Health and Human Services leadership. And so that has really benefited my role and my ability to reach the community. And
But I would think you'd be much more
Interfaith
direct right
Works.
now. I mean, as much as you involved with the community for the senator, you're still having to be dealing on those issues that are federal issues. And so many cases, and having worked on the Hill, and so many
Yes.
calls coming in, that you need to refer on to the county level or to the state level because
That's
it's
right.
not a federal issue. Here you are. You're with Shane Rock and team.
That's
and
right.
Is
On the ground.
Is on the ground. Real human beings. I would think it's seeing the kind of potential that one can have at the
Right.
Senate level, at the federal level, actually making it on the ground.
It is. I mean, that's a great point. I did do constituent services, and I was actually based here in Rockville.
Right.
So that also gave me the opportunity to be in the community. And so that was actually very similar in terms of having a direct impact that on behalf of the senator, and now with the organization, and it's really an empowering place to be. We see the impact of our programming through our clothing center, through our day program, our empowerment center down in Silver Spring, and also through our clothing center here in Rockville as well, and the number of people that we serve.
Suzanne, so do you fund other nonprofits, or do you have programs of your own that you actually run directly with the people?
Yes, well, we have 14 integrated programs actually, and that's housing programs. We have shelters. We have a very rigorous vocational services program. We're connected to employers throughout the county, and we have transitional housing. We have English language courses. So we have a referral system. So we really serve about 17,000 people in our different programs.
And do you work through churches and synagogues and mosques, or that?
Thank you. That's a great question. We do. We have partnerships with 160 different faith communities throughout the county, and we really rely on those congregations for volunteers in particular. I mean, they do financially support the organization, but like, for example, in our Women's Center, volunteers provide and serve meals every day of the year, every meal. So we have thousands of people that help us from faith
That's always
communities.
been what's impressed me, is how you get a congregation comes, and it might be just a few people,
Yes.
and then it grows and more of them, and people do this for 20 years.
exactly right.
That their families, their children grow from young to adults,
Yes.
helping serve, and it really teaches such a lesson.
Right. And do you get most of your referrals from the congregations? And or-
We actually get some referrals through congregations, but also through the Health and Human Services at the county, and then individuals will call in, and through our clothing center, actually, where we serve about 13,000 people. We don't serve, but people come through there for help with clothing. Everything is free, clothing and household goods, and we have other programs located in that same building, so we're able to reach the shoppers
We have
that
about
come
30
through.
seconds left. Final
Yes.
thoughts.
Well, I did want to mention our upcoming breakfast. It's our annual event, and
Great.
this year we're going to be highlighting our corporate champion. This year is Home Depot,
Okay.
and we're working with Home Depot. They've employed several of our clients, and so we're very excited about that. We also we have a humanitarian of the year, Jessica Nickel and her family. And then also Steve Hull and Bethesda Magazine. So we have a lot of celebrating to do. And,
There we
and
go. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
Did a great job
Thank
on
you,
your
Don.
first time.
Appreciate that.
Nice job. Thank all of you for joining me, and thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.